No, they're doing good on a lot of the corners.
Yeah.
I'm not so bad. I'm in a big truck all the time, but you see some of the little cars.
Yeah, I notice it.
Yeah.
Mike made it.
Yeah, for sure.
No
I had 2 people
You're
pull
under
out
the
in front of
wire.
me on Partridge the other day.
You're in time.
Oh yeah, I always do.
Geez, you still had a minute and a half.
Are you off right now, Kathy? Or
No, long change tonight.
long change?
Yep.
One more week to go. Now you're on nights or days?
Going to nights.
Nights.
Yep.
Always start on day shift?
Always.
So
You're in the same run as Randy?
Yes. Yep.
Randy at the corner now, yeah?
Yeah.
Man run.
Shifting for Manok.
Nice. Mechanical shifter?
No, mighty.
Mining shifter?
Yeah.
He's got
Raise.
both tickets, eh? So. Yeah.
Raise?
Yeah.
Yeah, Alamac. Well, he did mechanical for Alamac. So.
No, I remember, yeah. That's good. A little closer to home, man.
Jordan's out there too.
Jordan's there now, too.
And
That's
Carol.
exactly.
Because they were both going to be at Alamo St. Mary's.
Okay, we're on.
Moved by Councilor Moffat, seconded by Councilor Hudson. Resolved that the regular meeting commence at the hour at 7 p.m. And be it further resolved that Council acknowledges that we are meeting in the Robinson Superior Treaty Area on lands that have been traditionally used by several Indigenous nations. But we would like to pay special recognition to our closest Indigenous neighbors, the communities of Bittigon, Shinabik, and Pic-Mobrit First Nations. We wish to recognize the long history of the First Nations and Métis people in our region specifically and show respect to them today. All in favor? Is there any? I'll call the meeting to order. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Seeing none. Moved by Councillor Hudson, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Resolved that the agenda be approved as circulated. All in favor? Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. We'll move on to the delegations and presentations. So we're on our delegation. You're on.
Sorry about that. I couldn't hear you too well. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today or tonight. My name is May. I've worked with the township on their asset management plan for around a year, actually. It was a lot of great work and effort, and I wanted to share some of the work that we did doing that. So before I get started, I wanted to give a quick shout out to the people that I worked with. It was instrumental that we had people on the municipality side working with us to make sure that the plan came to fruition. And so Chris Towns was a great resource to have on the township side. We definitely picked Owen's brain and Terry's brain as well, but it was really great having Chris on that team from your end. Otherwise, it really does delay our work and effort. So just a quick shout out to you, Chris.
Thank you.
But just to get started here, I wanted to go over the steps or the process, tying municipalities, Ontario municipalities, to the provincial regulation and the kind of work that's expected. So when we're talking about asset management, we're really talking about the level of service that you're providing to the public. So we don't care too much about the actual assets as much as we care about the service that they're providing. So roads provide a transportation source. Your water mains provide clean drinking water. Your parks and your playgrounds provide a quality of life for your public and your residents. So that's really what our focus was to look at what level of service are you trying to provide. And I'll touch on the OREG and how that ties into levels of service in a couple of slides. but really what level of service are you providing, and what kind of information do we need to collect and have for your assets so that we can manage them as well as we can, and extend their life, and allow them to provide or continue providing that level of service standards that you're expecting from them. We looked at cost as well, so we did a lot of work looking at the cost of the different life cycle activities of your assets. So if we're talking about roads, we're looking at what's the cost of constructing it, maintaining it, rehabilitating it, and then replacing it. But because all of those costs will impact the level of service that you can provide, because if you're not doing enough maintenance, let's say, then you're not going to be able to provide a certain level of service. And seeing what's the most optimal or efficient life cycle strategy that you can employ depending on the types of roads that you have, which ones are more critical, which ones have higher risk to them. So that brings me to risk. We looked at what metrics does the township, public works, recreation collect that we can use as risk metrics. Assets or asset attributes that we can use that will impact the likelihood of an asset failing versus the consequence of it failing. So from a economic standpoint, how expensive is it going to be to replace or repair? From health and safety aspect, are you going to impact a lot of people? Is there a risk of injury or fatality, God forbid? From an environmental aspect, what are the impacts on nature, on bodies of water around you, on the climate or the environment around you? What kind of consequences might these assets have on the services? And so we worked really hard to collect as much information as we could, because really that's going to impact your capital planning, and it's going to impact how proactive you can be with your assets and managing them. And it's been proven, it's been shown that if you can be a little bit more proactive with your assets and a little bit less reactive, then you're going to not only be able to save costs, but be able to use those cost savings and put them somewhere else where they're necessary, and extend the service life of your assets so that on an annual basis you're not spending as much on it either. So we really worked on including the most up-to-date costing information, not relying on historical costs, using the latest condition information that we have, latest performance, and getting the staff to input or provide us with that kind of information. Now, the reason it's important, not just for data, but also to manage people, to have the right people on the team that understand the vision, understand why we're collecting data. A good example would be the work order system that you guys have. That's a great tool, because then public works staff can track their time, track what activities they're putting their labor and their time into, how much it costs them, and how much time it took them, right? And that kind of information is really important because you can drive decisions based on that. And it's nice that you guys are getting an intern soon to help you collect information, condition information, especially on your roads, on your sidewalks, on your point assets, because that kind of resource is very helpful to continue collecting this kind of information. And with every municipality that I've had the pleasure of working with, the one thing that I keep reiterating is that asset management is a long-term game. It's not a short-term plan that you can put in place. It's very much long-term when you're looking at establishing some structure, some governance around how to collect data, who's collecting it, who's responsible for it, and actually putting that into your capital plan. So it's nice to see that, when I was working with Chris and the team, everyone thought of it as a long-term game, and they were slowly but surely working towards getting their asset management program in place, and not to say perfecting it, but striving towards that. Just about the actual OREG deadline. We were able to complete the asset management policy, which you guys have, since approved, and it's on your township website. The plan that we developed with the team this time around satisfies the asset management plan for 2021, for July of this year, 2021, which deals with the current levels of service for your core assets. So your core assets are your roads, your bridges and culverts, your storm, water, and wastewater networks. But we did a little bit more than that. We also looked at the non-core assets, like your buildings, your machinery, your vehicles, and we did as much work as we could on them. And with a lot of municipalities, their non-core data is not there. It's not as componentized, it's not as reliable, and so that kind of information still needs a little bit more work. But we worked with the data that we had. For the plan right now, we focus on the current levels of service. So I'll walk through levels of service in a little bit, but it's really focusing on the mandated level of service metrics that the province expects you to track on an annual basis. So moving forward, there are levels of service that we worked with staff on to identify where we were going to be getting that information and who's storing it and where is it being saved so that it's centralized. But those were mandated. Come 2023, those levels of service are not mandated by the OREG, by the regulation. They're actually up to the municipality's discretion what they want to start collecting or tracking. And we did a little bit of work with the township to identify what are some potential metrics that we can start using or tracking and that are easy and operational. But there's going to be a little bit more work to do on that front. And then come 2024, that's when the province expects you to identify your proposed levels of service. So that means you've got your current levels of service, you've been tracking them over year after year, and you see a pattern or a trend with the level of service. Come 2024, they expect you to identify a proposed level of service, and that could mean either increasing that level of service, decreasing it, or keeping it the same. Now with that, if you do choose to change it in any way, you have to actually justify why you're changing it. So you have to identify whether it's because of demographic changes. So maybe there's a level of service shift because maybe there's more seniors in the township. Maybe there's more younger folks coming in. Maybe there's some political change or service expectations from the public. But really just trying to justify why it is that you want to change that level of service. And also proving in a way that you can sustain that change. So they would want to see if you can financially actually afford to change that level of service. And that's really going to make municipalities accountable for the assets that they have. So instead of building the next new arena, you're going to think about maintaining the arena that you have, or you're going to think a little bit more in depth about, do we need another arena? Are we at capacity? Is that a level of service that we can, from a capital standpoint, but also an operating and maintenance standpoint, can we actually financially manage it? So it's really trying to get municipalities to be more in line with the realistic standards, the realistic levels of service, and justifying their choices. In terms of updating and approval from a council perspective, what your responsibilities are going to be, you need to review and update the plan, or at least approve the updated plan every 5 years. And it could be a little bit less than every 5 years. It could be every 3 years if you wanted to, every 4 years with every new council change, but no more than 5 years where you have to update the asset management plan. And this is after 2024, so I want to stress that it's not after 2021 or 2023, it's only after you've identified your proposed levels of service in 2024 that you need to update it every 5 years. And that brings me back to why it's a long-term gain. It's not something that you can, just develop with a consultant and then leave on the shelf. It's something that's a living document that you're going to be going back to and updating and relying on. And then beyond those 5 years that you have to update, you also have to conduct an annual review of your asset management progress every year. And that's, again, after 2024. So after 2024, you have to, as a council, review the asset management progress and the recommendations that are in the plan and see where you're at with them. Have you progressed in some of the condition information that we wanted to collect, in some of the performance indicators, where are they at and what are some action items that we have to do to make sure we meet those levels of service that we've identified. And of course, you would have to have the plan and the policy on your website, available to the public so that they can have a copy of it at any time. And I've seen multiple grants and funding request your URL for the plan and the policy so that they can more or less prove that you have them on your website and that they're actually developed. So that's really where I see the province checking if people have or municipalities have their asset management plan in place, is requesting them when they're looking for funding. Now, in terms of where the asset management plan is with the Township of Manitowoc, as I mentioned, we have satisfied the 2021 regulations and most of the 2023 regulations. Now, I say most of it because the data that we use for the non-core can be improved on. And of course, for the asset management plan to remain operational and to actually provide you with the projects and the assets that you want to prioritize, it should be using the latest and greatest as much as possible. So keep in mind that the values or the numbers that I showed you today, they're changing. They're ever changing because it depends on the assets that you dispose of and that you add to your inventory. It depends on the replacement cost that you're using, moving from using CPI inflation to unit costs from your latest contractor prices or projects, so that it's a little bit more reliable. Refining your service life for your assets, and so it's something that's consistently moving, and that's why you need resources. So someone like that intern that's being hired, that's a great opportunity for that person not only to collect the data that you need and keep it up to date, but also to familiarize themselves with the database and the software and refine it where they can. In terms of the conditions, again, this is something that's constantly changing, and that's why come 2023, you want to have reliable data for your non-core assets, and you guys are looking for or are waiting approval from SPM funding for building condition assessment, which is fantastic timing because this is really the best time to go out and collect condition information and rehab information on your buildings. And not only that, but componentizing them so that the building is not just this one big line item. It is, you've got the roof, you can see the roof separated, the HVAC, the plumbing, the electrical, and that's going to help you be a little bit more proactive because you know when things are going to fail a lot sooner. You know the condition of your roof, so you don't have to assume or wait until it fails to fix it. And I've dealt with municipalities where they wait a little too long, and then when one roof fails, the rest of them are failing at the same time, and that becomes a very expensive capital expenditure for them. So it's great that you guys are doing that or are in the process of getting funding to be able to do that, because that's going to be the majority of the replacement cost or the value of your non-core is your buildings. Now, what I also wanted to look at is or mention is the Parks and Rec Master Plan that you are looking at doing as well. This is a great resource or report that's going to provide you a 10-year capital plan on what you need to do with those kinds of services and those assets, and that's going to feed your level of service for those assets. So I think you guys are doing a lot of great work to prepare yourself for that 2023 and 2024 requirements, and it is great to hear. And I think a lot of municipalities are not at your stage at the moment. So it's great to hear. And, well, this slide, I didn't need it, but I love this slide and I always want to show it somehow. But it's really showing the need to have someone dedicated to asset management. So as I said, it is a long-term game and there's a lot of responsibility especially with these 5-year updates and the annual review that you need to do. So this is not something that, I would say can be a part-time. It really is a full dedication for a staff member to work on it. It's nice that you have the intern that's going to work towards that, but having someone that's dedicated to asset management, whether you decide to share that person with a neighboring municipality, which is a great idea, it's good to think about having someone like that can take lead on asset management. And then from a financial perspective, so the forecasted capital plan that we have in the asset management plan and the tax implications in there, those again are constantly changing. So you may think that it's too low or too high, but really you have to think about the level of service that you're trying to provide or that you are currently providing, and how much you can afford is what's going to dictate your capital requirements. So you can choose to come 2024, change those levels of service so that you can actually afford certain projects or assets, but there's going to be a trade-off there. And so every time you update the asset management plan, you're refreshing your annual requirements, you're looking at your 10-year capital and where you can extend the life of certain assets, where you can push out certain projects because they're not as high risk based on your matrix, based on the work that you did. So it's something that you're trying to be data-driven, but you're trying to take away a little bit of that subjectivity of someone just saying, yeah, let's do this road or let's do this project next. It's getting the data to feed your decisions, your capital plan. And again, this just reinforces it. So looking at your annual requirements versus what you're actually putting in for those assets and what the replacement cost is, there's almost always going to be an annual deficit, but it's about slowly bridging that gap and putting, every year working towards making sure that your most critical assets are maintained, ultimately. And that brings me back to what I talked about in the beginning, which is balancing that cost, the risk, and the performance or the condition of your assets. So that's going to define what your level of service is, whether it's, like we said, the economic, the social, the political level of service that you're going to be tracking, and operational, of course, but managing those three pieces, what your tolerance for risk is, what costs are you able to tolerate, whether it's repair costs or replacement costs, and the performance or the condition that you want your assets to be in, that's going to feed your level of service. And at one point, you will want to engage your public about that. I'm sure they'll have a say on it. But you want to see what kind of level of service are they expecting and try to meet, at a compromise or at a realistic level of service that's manageable, that's feasible. So just wrapping up here with my recommendations or next steps that we would want to look at is consistently refining the data when it comes to conditions, replacement costs, service life. For some of your assets, it's going to be on a more frequent cycle, every 2 years, every 5 years. And for some, it might be a little bit more on the ad hoc stage or whenever there are resources that can help to collect that kind of information. But definitely when it comes to the facilities, getting that building condition assessment that's going to help you break down your assets and therefore understand the needs and when to start prioritizing certain replacement or rehab. That's going to be very useful. And then just feeding that into your level of service framework and making sure that you continue tracking that on an annual basis. And then once you get to that 2024, that's when you have so much good data that you can decide, intelligently what your proposed levels of service need to be. And that's really the end of my presentation. Again, the final piece will be updating the plan come 2023, 2024, and continuing to refine the data because that's what we want to drive our decisions. Did anyone have any questions?
No, that's good.
I just have the one question. On your slide on the state of the infrastructure conditions, do you have any way of evaluating where ours is as opposed to other communities that are our size? Would you know that? Or?
That's an interesting question, and it's really a yes or no. Because there's no standard way that every municipality is tracking their condition, every contractor basically has their own condition rating, and so it's not always the same comparing apples to apples in terms of where the condition or the performance of your assets are compared to your neighboring municipality. But that being said, we can look at, in general, how are your roads being maintained compared to a different municipality? How are they being maintained? What kind of life cycle activities are they doing that you potentially could also be doing that could be beneficial? But so that I don't know if that answers your question, but it's really a yes or no, just because the data is not standardized, and I wish there was a way to standardize it so that we could compare apples to apples. But there is a way to do that. Taking it with a grain of salt.
Okay. What criteria did you use to decide whether something was in poor condition or very poor condition or good or bad? Was that a guesstimate, or do you have actual data that would give you that?
Absolutely, yes. So that's a really good, great question, and it depends on the asset. So when we were talking about the road network, for example, which is one of the biggest pieces of asset classes you have, we rely on road need studies, which is done by an external contractor, and you would hope that information is accurate and it's numerical, and there's a methodology to it. But we also took in the expertise of your staff. So when we were talking to Terry and Owen, we made sure that they took a look at the assets and gave us their an educated opinion on it, or guesstimate, as you said. But when it comes to other assets like your sanitary, your water, your storm, those underground assets are a lot harder to rate in terms of condition, especially for your water, because there's no direct way you can assess the condition of your water. And that's where we got the help of AQUA. So the Ontario Clean Water Agency that you employ to deal with the treatment plants and your other water and wastewater structures. We got them to give us their educated opinions, because they work with the assets day in and day out, and really give us some condition ratings on those. So based again, a yes or no on that, where it's a little bit of the contractor information that is standardized, but also the expertise that you guys have on staff.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Okay. Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Hudson. Resolved that Council is in receipt of the presentation provided by May Abdu, Asset Management Consultant, Public Sector Digest regarding the Township of Manitowoc's Asset Management Plan. And be it further resolved that Council thanks the above noted representative for attending and providing the Council with this great presentation. All in favor? Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye, Chris.
Hey, bud, nice to see you.
You too.
Where's the buttons? The plug's on the wall there.
Moved by Councillor Hudson, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting held on January 27, 2021 are adopted and circulated. All in favor? Moved by Councillor Hudson, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Resolved that the minutes of the special meeting held on January 28, 2021 are adopted and circulated. All in favor? There are no petitions. There's no correspondence. So, minutes of the, moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Hudson. Resolved that the minutes of the meeting of the Thunder Bay District Board of Health held December 16, 2020 are accepted as received. All in favor? Okay. The next item is CO update.
Through the chair. As I'm sure you're all aware, the province made some announcements on Monday related to COVID. The declared emergency that was set to expire on February 9th did expire. They did not renew it. We are still under the stay-at-home order until February 16th, which time they'll go back to using the color system and the Reopening Ontario Act, that piece of legislation to regulate COVID and what's going on. They have put some other measures in place as well to control things. So my understanding right now is that on the 16th, when the stay-at-home order is lifted, we will remerge at gray, and then they will evaluate going forward from them. I'm disappointed to say that I had to watch those announcements on the media and have not received anything from the province or the Thunder Bay District Health Unit as information to the community. So we're supposed to be managing and helping them with this incident, and it's disappointing to see this kind of stuff happening. I expect on the 16th or 17th that they're going to, because not every place in Ontario is going to be under the same situation, and that we may see direction at that time. And we've already seen the announcements that I watched was media release, like, Toronto News, and we've already seen the media start to interpretate that stuff. And it's a problem for us because we don't have the document from them to say this is what it means. So that's part of the reason why we haven't issued a press release to the public from us, because we don't have those documents in our hand to do that from. So as soon as we get better information, we will put that up and pass that on. And at this point in time, I recommend the public continue to go to the Thunder Bay District Health Unit website and the Province of Ontario COVID information website if they're looking for details, because that's all the information that we have at this time as well. I know it's not very good news for Council. We were hoping to have clear direction for the arena tonight as well. I did talk to the Recreation Director. Simcoe, the arena contractor, is scheduled to be in Scriber on the 17th of February, and at this time it's anticipated that we're going to still be under gray, and we have no way to know anything different this time.
So under gray, that means that no arena being used?
Yes.
Okay.
So I don't know what Council wants to do, but we're in a point now where we're getting down to the nitty-gritty on the 17th. What do we do? Whether we're going to see something else from the province or change or not, I can't speak to that because I don't have any information from them.
Do we know if any of the other communities have decided not to keep their
I didn't go around and look at all the others. I tell you, I just didn't do that.
Because if we're going to gray,
yeah, and I don't know, how long. Will it be another week? Will it be a 2 week? The other thing that the province put in different that we didn't have under the Reopening Act Ontario before is what they're calling an emergency break. And because we don't have the declared emergency, they can't enact stuff without going back to the legislators. So they put this emergency break term in place, which means if numbers start to climb again, they will just pull the trigger and we'll go back to stay-at-home order again. They put that in place this time as well. The other operation is the ski hill, which I haven't seen the legislation, but there's talk that under gray or some of the other colors, they may let ski hills operate. We did receive official notice from the Cowissa Ski Club volunteer group that rents the skis and such as well, that they will not be operating this year. And normally that's around 40% of our daily participant are people on rented skis as well. So.
Okay, and I did see on the Thunder Bay News that the ski hills in Thunder Bay were planning on opening.
Were they? Yes.
Yeah, Loch Lomond and Candy.
Yeah.
So, next week type of thing.
Yeah. We haven't seen that. I've heard that was in gray. They were permitted. I looked on the Thunder Bay District Health Unit website this afternoon. I could not find that. So I was told that was the case as well, but again, I haven't seen it and stuff. When I look at last year's average, we averaged 20 people a day at the hill. If I take 40% of that away on rented skis, we're talking about 12 people a day.
Hard to justify.
Yeah.
Especially when the season's coming to an end now. I mean, we're into mid-February now.
Yeah. We're talking a couple of weeks. March break at the most is, if we ever got to March break, that was always a good year.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, and that stands to say the same for the arena, I think.
We have to get out of gray for the arena to be used. Yeah.
Right. So if it happens that we're still in gray when they're moving into Manitouwadge, I guess we're going to have to shut her down.
It's $1,000 a day roughly that we've been paying to keep it as the way it is right now.
Yeah, but if they're scheduled to come through here around the 17th,
yes,
I think that would be my vote. If we're
that
still
would be
in
my
gray
vote
when they
as well.
get here, we're going to have to shut her down.
Through the chair, I'd have to agree with Jim. It only makes sense to.
Through the chair, do we not need a resolution to?
If council's going to vote on it,
Yes.
we're going to need a resolution. I didn't prepare for that because I was hoping that we were going to get clear information to bring you the documentation, and that's not what's happened. Like I say, I'm very disappointed as an emergency planner that things are going this way.
I mean, I would love to see it reopen, but I mean, at this rate, it doesn't look like it's.
Well, could the resolution not say that if we don't get out of gray?
By the time they get here,
By the time they get here, that we close it?
that would be.
You could do that.
Yeah.
Through the chair, I would agree with my fellow councillors. That's the way to go.
Sorry, minor hockey.
And if we are, well, they're not. They can't play anyways.
Yeah, I know,
They're not allowed
that's
to have
what I mean.
games. They're not allowed
Yeah,
to do
yeah.
all those things. It's restrictive.
Not our fault.
No.
Yeah.
It's
no,
just
I
on
mean,
unfortunate times, right?
Yeah.
And the ski hill direction, you going to include that, or do you want to put
Yes,
direction
I
on that as
think-
well?
I would
That-
say,
do
yeah.
both.
Pull that.
If
Okay.
we're not going to have rentals, it doesn't.
Yeah, well, they've already, the last report that we came to council, and they reiterated that again today.
Has the hill even been groomed this year?
They've been doing some grooming. We have new people, so they're trying to get trained and take
training
advantage
stuff.
of when they get snow to groom and have things like that in place. Yeah.
Well, I think this is a great opportunity too to do the training and to do
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
maintenance upgrades, whatever needs to be done, and go full out next year.
And the same thing, like, just for the sake of our staff, even though we may pull the ice and all this stuff, we don't plan on displacing staff. We have enough work that they could help out in other areas and doing maintenance and fixing work that we want to be doing. So there is no plan to displace staff.
That's good news.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry, Julian, I should have had that ready for you. We could bring it back at new business if they wanted to address it. Is that the appropriate process, Julian?
It probably should have been added to the agenda as an
Yeah,
item.
I understand
previously.
that. Yeah, just that we could do it at,
Yeah, because I thought it was going to be on the agenda, actually.
yeah.
Well, we can go to the next two and then come back to it after.
Okay.
Moved by Councillor Hudson, seconded by Councillor Moffat.
I didn't finish my report either.
Oh, you're not finished.
Sorry, through the chair. No, we kind of jumped out of gun there, but
Okay.
the clerk can get that ready when we get to new
Yeah.
business,
Okay.
and you can address the resolution. Thank you. Go back to my notes here, if I could. I'm sure you've seen the media around the Ontario Fire College closing. There's been a lot of talk about that in the news. They've made an announcement that they're closing the campus in Gravenhurst at the end of March, and they're looking at offering training through regional programs. Last night, I attended a web meeting hosted through the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs, which was a Northern Ontario group, was basically Kenora border, Winnipeg border to Manitowoc, the chiefs in this area, and how we thought it was going to affect the departments in the north, and what message do we want to send to the fire marshal and the government about this. There has been a number of resolutions coming across our desks about it. There is no concerted effort being put forward. It's all just municipalities on their own right now. So what the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs is doing is hosting these meetings quickly. They will put out a position paper, and they're hoping to get with AMO and align with AMO in their demand. This is basically comes down to downloading. We could send a person to Gravenhurst for a course for $65. Room and board was included and everything. And now when you go to a regional school, it could be a regional class in Scriber or Thunder Bay, but then meals and motels and all that would become our cost. Plus, the tuition at the college was $65. It was funded by the province. Now you'll be at I don't want to call it a private business, but a regionally operated school where they've got to recover costs and all this stuff because it's not supported program. So the tuition fees and things like that are going to be going up to maybe cost prohibitive levels for fire training. So there is big concern on how it's going to move forward. So we asked last night at the meeting that there be a component to the position paper from the OFC regarding Northern Ontario and training here. One of the issues is the college sets a standard where you need 24 students in a class. So they want to hold a regional course, you need 24 students. Well, sometimes in the north, we have a hard time doing that. We can maybe get 14 or 16. So we need some consideration to be able to go along and have those kind of courses at those levels. And it doesn't work. Yes, I could bring a course to Manitowoc and maybe get 16 people in. But I'll never get 16 that need that same course over the next few years. Yet I'm hiring people still or getting new volunteers. So how long you got to send those people away to get those courses, or keep them for years and not getting them the skills they need.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of concern. I spent a lot of time at the fire college back in the day, and it's going to really impact the volunteer fire service. The big centers, the big departments, they own their own training sites. They have their own programs in-house, and they run it. It's the small operations, which there's 11,000 full-time guys, firefighters in Ontario, and there's almost 20,000 volunteers. So the gap is really big on where the training loss is going to be. So as soon as I get a copy of that position paper, I'll be coming back to council, probably asking for your support, or there's going to be a motion to support AMO putting this forward. Something along those lines is what we expect will happen. And they're closing it quickly. They're talking March to have the college closed. And the reason there's been no consultation of the fire service done on this matter. So they closed at the beginning of COVID, basically. And I didn't even understand that, and I commented them at the time. They gave permission for kids to go back to school, but not for growing people to go to college or fire college and take the training. So, maybe that was the start of the erosion of the operation.
Okay.
So we'll keep you abreast of what's going on with that, and when the time's right and the right message, because they want one message put forward, not a bunch of fractured messages. The Community Services Programmer has been working hard on developing virtual programs and events. I encourage the public to take a look at Facebook and our websites for these events. They're doing virtual stuff for Frosty Days. I don't know if any councillors have had a chance to look at it. We've also entered into going to get the name right, the Ontario Ice Fishing Challenge, which starts this weekend. And Manitowoc has put our name in the hat to be one of the communities in the Ice Fishing Challenge. And this is also the free family weekend, I think is
Yes.
the proper term for ice fishing in Ontario. So that's one of the things you can do with COVID is get out among your family and take your family group. And, so we encourage people to look at the website, Facebook page, and get involved in those things. Thank you. So that's my report.
Finished? Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, just on that last item, Mr. Cranny was speaking about the fish derby, like the ice fishing challenge. So I'm the chair of MO, the local outdoor enthusiast group. So we're putting ourselves, like, supporting it because we always ran a fish derby for 10 years, and for obvious reasons we can't run it this year, but we are putting our full support in behind them to encourage people to get out because every year we had 200 people fishing. So it would be great if, because this is a 2-week long event too. That was just in one day. So I really encourage everybody to get out and just catch fish and register them, and who knows what will happen. Just get our town on the map for it, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Did you want to?
Now, how do we proceed with that?
Well,
Technically, do we have to amend the agenda?
well, it should have been on the agenda, yes.
Or do we just do this?
Can we not just do now in addition to the agenda?
We could.
It's just a resolution of direction to staff. Is that what you're doing there?
Yes, that's what that is. But
Yeah.
to be discussed in an item on the agenda, it should have been added at the beginning
Yes.
and amended the agenda.
We could still do that as, I believe, a late addition and have to pull your counsel.
Well, I think what we'll do is I'll draft a resolution stating that council amends the agenda to include,
This is
Yeah,
the-
yeah.
this resolution.
Just it came up through conversation.
and then
now we have to deal with it.
then we can
Then we can do that.
do that under new business.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And in the meantime, I'll do the other resolutions. Moved by Councillor Hudson, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Being a bylaw to appoint a municipal auditor be read a first and second time. You're on, sir.
Thank you. So our 3-year audit term is completed, and we're looking at audit season again real soon. Right on. So we put out an RFP. We posted it on social media, the AMO website, municipal world website, etc. We received 2 tenders, one from Grant Thornton and one from NMP. And administration is recommending that we continue our services with Grant Thornton for the next 3 years.
Just for curiosity, how's the price compared to what we've paid in the past?
Well, the Grant Thornton came in at about approximately half the price of the competitor, and we're looking at $1,000 to $3,000 more over the 3 years.
Okay.
There is no major change whatsoever.
Okay.
And we have worked with that auditor for 30 plus years.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
Okay.
And furthermore, be read a third time, passed and numbered as bylaw number 2021-08. All in favor? Thank you.
08.
Next item is an administration report by Mr. Towns again.
Thank you. So back in October, November, we had tax sales. There was 16 of them. At the end of that, they all failed. We vested the properties into the municipality's name, so we can either reduce or put a minimum bid for the minimum tenders. And we need to have the chief building official go through and inspect the property to see what that value may be, or if we can legally sell the buildings or the properties, or if they need to be demolished. And at least at that point in time, we can still get money on vacant land. In the worst case scenario, a neighbor would buy it to build a garage, and we would have a new assessment on it. So right now we have 2 outstanding properties that are coming close to the term where we need to make a decision. 45 Otter and Plan M163, lots 1 through 7, Shabandawan Avenue. known as the 40 Manitou parking lot, for the Service Ontario parking lot.
On the far side of the property.
Yes.
Where Service Ontario entrance is,
Yep.
Yeah.
that end of the building, there was separate property there that was part of that hotel property originally.
Oh, okay.
So administration is recommending that we vest 45 otter into the municipality's name, and we'll have the chief building official add that to the list of properties to inspect for either demolition or a minimum tender amount, reduced taxes. And we recommend that we vest the Shabanda Avenue property into the municipality's name and continue to use it for municipal services.
Okay, any questions?
Looks good.
Sounds
Moved by
reasonable.
Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Hudson. Resolved that Council is in receipt of Administration Report TR 2021-03 submitted by Chris Towns, Treasurer, regarding failed tax sale properties. And be it further resolved that upon conclusion of Council's review and consideration, Council vests 45 Otter Avenue into the municipality's name, declares the surplus property, and advertise for public tender. Council vests Plan M163 Lot 1 to 7 Shabanda Avenue 40 Manitou parking lot into the municipality's name and continue to use it for municipal purposes. All in favor? Okay. And you're still on.
So at the last meeting of Council of January 13th, Council passed resolution for administration to transfer reserve and reserve funds to repurpose them to current operations that we're under, etc. This report is for information purposes only, and I have attached a copy of the new general ledger with the new amounts as discussed and approved by Council.
Are there any questions about any of the items on it? Okay, fine, thank you. Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Hudson. Resolved that Council is in receipt of Administration Report TR 2021-04 submitted by Chris Towns, Treasurer, regarding reserves and reserve fund transfers as provided to Council for information purposes. All in favor?
Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Scapanello, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Resolved that Council amends the agenda to include the discussion on operations of the Manitowais Arena and the Kawasa Ski Hill under business number 13-03. All in favor? Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Champanel. Council direct staff to shut down the arena ice plant on the arrival of Kimco after the provincial announcement on February 16, 2021, if the district is designated to open under Gray. And be it further resolved that the Kawasa Ski Club be directed to not open if the provincial announcement of February 16, 2021 is for the district to open under Gray.
Ski Hill is a different situation. The arena is affected by the Gray. As Councillor Moffat indicated, Gray is allowing ski hills to open.
Yeah.
But what I was saying earlier, the ski rentals and that stuff, we've already received official notice. So that's 40% of your participation was rented ski hill for the day. So you don't have that. So if you look at 20 people on average, you're talking about opening for 12 people on average a day.
So we just
Okay,
said,
so just shut it down completely.
shut it down. And be it further resolved that the Kawasa Ski Hill be directed to not open in the future. All in
For
favor?
the remainder of the
For the remainder.
for this 2021 season. Yeah, the remainder of the season.
We're not going down that road.
Okay, to not open for the remainder of the season. All in favor? Moved by Councillor Hudson, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Resolved that the regular meeting adjourn at the hour of 7:52. All in favor?